Okay, peace family. So I am here with my dear sister Táyò, and she does amazing work. She has a beautiful family. She's just a all-around dope sister, and I will let her introduce herself. So can you just, tell the people who you are, about some of the work that you do, just about all the dopeness.
Okay, I'll do that. So I am Táyò Ọyafé Mbande. I cannot tell you how good it feels to not have to correct somebody pronouncing my name. I mean, I feel like I'm doing these interviews all day, every day these days. And I'm like, it's not Táyò. It's not. Just use your gut there. Like, use your internal compass. So I am a mother of three. I am married to Aremu Mbande, and we got three babies, Yaya Ayan, Kamalu May, and Abiono Esanya. We had kids very fast, y'all. We had them like straight out of college and just kept going. So much of my life was just momming. So I was like really struggling to figure out how I was gonna balance like being a human being, being an adult, being a young Black woman who just graduated from college. And so that was a challenge, and I was just searching for some type of, what do you call it? Like fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I got into the work that I do. But I am a birth and postpartum doula, and I own Chicago Birthworks Collective with my mother. We became doulas together in 2018 after I had my son in 2017. Dope. And I was just kind of like, people always ask like, well, what led you to like, well, what wouldn't lead a woman who is in her childbearing years to helping other women? So it's kind of weird. And it's really good to be talking to you because I usually have to contextualize stuff that I know I won't have to do here, But people say like, well, how did you get interested? Why would a Black woman not be interested in sharing this information with other Black women? What do you mean how? I had a baby. That's how I got interested in. So the work that we do is very broad. I guess people know it as generally birth work. And sometimes some of my birth work sisters get a little bit annoyed at me calling them birth keepers, but that is it. Because they're like, this is so like trendy, that term birth keepers, but that's what it is. We are trying to protect the sacred process of reproduction, of family building, of birth, specifically the postpartum healing period. So I do all of that stuff. So as a doula, I am teaching, I'm holding space, I'm hands-on supporting, I'm attending births, all types of stuff.
Man, that's heavy, man.
It's a lot.
It's like I said, y'all, she's amazing. So let's dive into it. Like, just talk to me about like, what was your upbringing like? Did you have any women in your family that did this type of work? Did you have any men in your family that were just in healthcare in general? What type of household did you grow up in?
So I have a very woman-dominated family, very woman-dominated. So I am the first woman in my lineage for the past 5 generations to be married. Grew up with just straight women. I have one biological uncle. So my aunts are, of course, I have all aunts. My mom has 6 sisters. My grandmother was one of 6 sisters and 1 boy. Wow. And then my great grandmother, she's the oldest of like 11, and I think there were maybe like 2 or 3 boys. So we have like all women. So though I didn't grow up doing this work that I'm doing now, I grew up in a space where that work was happening around me, and I couldn't identify it as doula work or as birth work. So when I became a mom, I was just so excited because I'm like, dang, I finally get to do what all my aunties been doing, right? And my aunts, and my youngest aunt is only 6 years older than me. But my aunts are almost like older sisters to me. So we all grew up in one big pod. So when I became a doula, when I became a mom, I was really excited because I'm like, yeah, I finally can be amongst their ranks, And it kind of was like I folded in. Can you imagine being pregnant at the same time as your aunt or uncle?
Yeah, that's
It was weird. It was so strange, but I folded in like abnormally well. So like I would talk to my aunt about how her pregnancy was going, even though this was her last, it was my first child. And things just started to make sense. So I realized like there are some unspoken things that have been happening for years that I, you know, in my highly educated self and my overthinking mind, I'm like, that's not old. This is new. Like a doula, that just happened. And my family's like, no, but we've been doing that. So I would say that I grew up in the non-modern way of birth work. So my mother has attended every birth of her niece and nephews. So as the oldest sister, she just, I guess, always had that right.
Yeah.
Be in that space when her siblings had their children. I remember my youngest aunt, the last child that she had, she lived with us. This was 2016 maybe. And my aunt was in her 30s, like basically persuaded her younger sister to move in with her from a different state. All of my family's in California. She moved to the Midwest with her children so that my mother could take care of her in her pregnancy and postpartum. And, you know, I was just like, Mom, you can't force that woman to do that, you know?
Yeah.
But when I saw it unfold, I realized my mother understood the place that she was supposed to hold in their lives. And she's like, if I am here and I need to do this work for you, you need to come to me. You have to. So she put them on a train and was like, you need to be here next week. And I think that's when I started paying attention to like, dang, Mom, like, you've been running the Underground Railroad or what? Like, it seemed like you've been really doing this work, you know? So when I trained to be a doula with my mom and people asked, they started asking like, how long have you been a doula and how many births have you been to? I will always have to check them and let them know, this is not new work. So this woman right here, she has been doing this her whole life. So though she just trained to become a doula, you know, and we trained with a very incredible elder. Her name is Shafia Monroe. Most people know her as the woman who trained Erykah Badu.
Wow.
But she raises her doulas in the way of granny midwifery, which is like the most traditional African American midwifery practice. So even though we trained with someone who was very African-centered in their approach and very Black-centered in their practices, I don't know if you can hear those pots and pans back there.
Oh, no, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, even though we trained with something like that, it still was kind of a modern practice, you know? And so to have people try to qualify or quantify your work in terms of, well, you just trained, how many births have you attended since you've been a trained doula, was real bizarre. And that's when I started to see, Táyò, like you came from a family that's been doing this. You got to be out your mind to think that you have a family full of women. I mean, full of women. And we have not been at each other's births. And we haven't been the one teaching each other about how to wrap your stomach and why you put a sheet on your stomach postpartum, or why you need to wear that house wool coat in the house after you have your baby. Of course, it's been us. So it took me a long time to see that I grew up in this.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to it.
That's amazing. Like I think it's beautiful when you get to the point in your journey and whatever you do, that you can see that, like, first you go out and you kind of like, okay, I'm exploring this new thing. And then you turn back and you're like, well,
it's
like
been the same thing. This is the same thing.
This is in my blood. It's in my ancestry. That's amazing. I mean, the next question I had for you, you kind of started to answer, but it's like, you know, what made you want to start getting into this work? And you kind of touched on, like, it's always around you.
I think, you know, what you said is kind of like sparking some thoughts in me. There are things that we can rationalize or consciously be able to identify that we are destined to do, right? We're like, okay, this is my call. This is the work I'm supposed to do. For other people, they go to have that information revealed to them because they may not be unsure. Wherever you find yourself on the path, I think that if you just, you gotta kind of be in two places at once. So like make a very thorough assessment of your family unit, or, you know, your genealogic history, or, you know, just the people who are in immediate contact with you, even if it's just your community, even if you don't feel, you know, the most rooted in your own biological family. Make an assessment, and I think you will always be able to identify what your calling is. So just like you said, like you look forward and you're doing this work, like I'm gonna get into this new thing I'm interested in. you will always be able to look back. So why not start where you are and not jump into the new thing? Why not look at where you are and say, dang, what's going on here? What are the issues that we have? What are the challenges that we're facing? What are the needs that we have? And you, I think, will be able to identify what your calling is once you start to line them up with your interests. So
absolutely,
to answer your question a bit, what kind of really helped me to figure out, okay, that's it, Tyler, that's it right there, was knowing that I love my family, like, and I love the women in my family. I am like a very woman-centered human. So much of my like spiritual identity is in being a woman. So there are a lot of people who are like, well, this is just my social identity. Like, no, this is like physiological, biological. And I commune with other women so well because I was raised in these ways. So like my husband, even like we have tons of conflict because he's like, yo, you are like a hardcore woman. That's all you do. And you feel like that's all you need. I'm like, yeah, y'all are the addition. Okay. You the extra. So I knew that this was the work because I could recognize I've been trained in this. So I had a little bit of interest because I had 2 children. But I'm like, Táyò, you got to be out your mind if you think that this is not the work for you and you were raised in a family of all women who have been reproducing your whole lives. You know, people have aunts and uncles who had their kids way older. I was alive when all my aunts were pregnant. So I watched the whole thing. So I got this extreme context that most people don't get. So it was me reproducing and having my children, but then also just being able to be guided by like a very real intuition that said, this your work, sis, obviously. You know, you're passionate about connecting with other women because you've been trained up in the way of communing with women, communicating with women, teaching them, learning from them. So I asked my mother to become a doula with me just in case I was wrong. Just in case I was like, you know, crazy and doing something weird. I'm like, well, at least my mom did it the same time as me. Yeah. So when we trained together and she said yes, and she was so willing, I was like, dang, this is us. This is it. Yeah. It's me and her.
Man, that's, yeah, like, there's so much deep stuff that you said there, man. I mean, I think for me, so like we talk a lot about reconnecting with Africa and African traditions, but for me, it's everything that you're sharing is confirmation that like a lot of these things we never lost. You know, it's like the things you're talking about that the women in your family are doing. Like, I'm pretty sure, like I just have a little bit of knowledge, but I'm pretty sure like these are very deep and ancient African traditions. Like how you said when your mom was like, yo, come stay with me. I'm going to help care for you during your pregnancy. Like that's like I can't give the exact name to it right now, but I'm sure if we went through many of the thousands of African cultures on the continent, it's a very African thing. So it's like, that's so deep because it's like we never forgot a lot of these things, you know, and that's just absolutely amazing. And that kind of leads me to my next question. So, and it's good this kind of coincided because like, you know, my brother and I do this Proverbs show. And so this week we're sharing a lot of Proverbs that honor motherhood and womanhood in general. And so the more that I'm learning, there's just so many deep things. Like there's a proverb that says, I shared the other day, that says basically we should kneel down before women because they gave birth to us before we became great. Right. And there's another one that says like, there's no Orisha like your mother, right? Your mother's like a god to you or whatever, right? And so my question is like, there's all this, in a lot of cultures, there's this deep sacredness around pregnancy, the birthing process, motherhood, all these things. And so I have 2 questions for you. So like, just talk to me about some of the ideological and cultural significance of the work that you do. And then the next thing is, in a modern sense, you know, I know this work matters in terms of like the health and safety of women and just Black women and women of color in general. So like, how do you view it? Like, because it's really deep, but just talk to me about the deepness.
Oh my gosh, it's so deep that like, I'm glad you split up into 2 questions. So we know we have been able to conceptualize so many things about life in terms of birth. You know, we call stuff like the rebirth or like, I grew up Christian. And so people call you what? Like a born again Christian. Everything is contextualized in this cycle. And you got to remember, like, it comes back to women. So we use this natural cycle that exists in the woman's existence to understand all things in life, pretty much, you know, like when was someone born or when did this happen? What was the beginning? And I was pregnant with an idea. So that to me helps me stay grounded in that. Like, first of all, sis, you ain't doing no new work, okay? Remember that. You're not doing any new work. This is a cycle that has been going on for all of time, that will continue to happen long after you. And I think where I enter in is, of course, during this time frame and this life cycle of mine. I was born in 93, so I'm coming into this work at this specific time zone. And my name is Ọyafé, and I try to like explain to people how I was in college. So, in college, I was like very just fun, outgoing, and I never like to have conflict with people. Never, never, never. But Oya is like quick, just like this is what has to happen to move on. And I had a really hard time transitioning from who I was before I had a child into who I'm supposed to be now. And right now, the time that we're in, we don't have that. Oh, somebody's at the door. We don't have like a luxury of time to play around. Like, I'm looking for words, but I know the words. We don't got time to play around when it comes to Black women's lives, when it comes to Black mothers surviving. So if we don't have Black women alive, Black families will cease to exist, right? And that's the quickest way. So we thought that it could be, we could demolish the Black family by tearing down Black men, right? And murdering Black men. You can. Black women can still reproduce. If that man impregnated someone and that person's seed was on the earth, they'll be good. And you're going to see communes of women together by themselves. But if you start killing off people's women, then those people can't reproduce and they will die out. So we don't have, this is where we are right now. We don't have that luxury. And so I came into this work understanding like, Táyò, this is your time to be a leader and to be serious about this change. It can't be a moment of you wanting to, replicate. There are a lot of very European models of birth work. Like, we want to just support any birth you want. I had to be very, very serious with myself and allow for my spirit and my ancestors to convict me and then approve for me to move forward the way that I did. I'm meaning that in the sense of, I tried to do this work the soft and gentle way, like, let's just nurture moms and teach them a little bit and hope that we were not getting good outcomes. Like, people were still having horrible birth outcomes as we were supporting that way. And that's when I started to learn, if Ọya says this needs to be done, it got to be done. Ain't no arguing. And if you don't want to do it, she'll make it happen. And you're going to be looking like, oh, did that person just lose their head? Oh my gosh. So right now, I'm very just straightforward in these facts. And it gives me so much peace. Because when you just listen, you be good. It gives me so much peace to be able to talk to moms and say, look, you want to live, right? And you understand that Black maternal mortality, this is happening. It's a phenomenon that's happening in a hospital, right? But that is the first place that you go to for your help. You understand that, right? And so you get how that's imbalanced, right? And when you start the conversation there, you just skip over so much of this extra labor that doesn't even have to happen. We were doing so much labor around how can we help Black women navigate hospitals better? Why are we putting so much energy into helping Black women navigate enemy grounds better? Before we're putting energy into, do you recognize what you're doing for real, for real? Before you become pregnant, if you are like, we joke a lot that when women pee on a stick, they're like, I want my epidural. I want my epidural. But really you're saying, I am now entering into this life cycle and I'm willing to jeopardize the safety, the sacredness of that cycle with this European tool or with this westernized tool or with the tool of the enemy. Like, you have to be able to identify those things. And so it took us a while we're also business owners, So we like navigating a lot of different spaces at once. But it took us a while to be able to find that good footing, and understand the foundation that we were moving with, because we was trying to inch around the work that we really needed to be doing. We was like, but how could we just say that a little nicer? How could we not offend? But that's not what this work is about. It's really literally saving lives. That's it. I'll tell you, one time I had just become a doula, and I was supporting this family. I just knew this was a white family. I was volunteering with this organization. And you kind of get connected with them virtually. So we have been texting and emailing and talking on the phone. I was like, oh, they white. They white for sure. So I arrive at their home. White man opens the door. I'm like, okay, let me get myself together. And I was with another Black sister. We were doula partners. We get in there. Is an East African woman sitting on the couch. I'm like, did you kidnap her? Or where'd she come from? But she had a very, very Anglo-Saxon first and last name. So I was like, the whole time I was feeling like, this is some weird, I don't know if she's here against her will or what. I was feeling so confused and so conflicted. So we support her throughout her pregnancy. She's like, yo, I gotta tell you, I'm so happy that y'all are both Black women. Like, this is very meaningful to me. I'm like, okay, we're here for a reason. Her labor kicks off. Things are going wonderful. Her husband is playing video games. He's like, this is great. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. Whatever.
Oh.
Long story short, that baby did not survive. And it was the most tragic thing I had ever experienced in my life. Like, she had a long, long labor it was so easy to identify the ways that her labor was manipulated. You ever been in a situation where something's so obvious, you're confused? Like, do anybody else see this, or am I tripping? You know, like, that was a clown with a machete running down the street, right? I did see, okay. So it was obvious that way, but that was in that beginning stage where I couldn't recognize that is the moment, you know? And I think that way y'all wanted to show me that, like, when you want to play around here, this is what will happen every time. When you see this moment is presented before you to do the work that I done told you you're supposed to do, and you want to inch and you want to make people comfortable, people will die. Babies can die. I didn't say anything. There was a moment where I told my doula partner, you know, they're either going to kill this woman or kill this baby. She was like, Táyò, don't say that kind of stuff. Like, come on. You need to be mindful with your words. I'm like, well, look, I just had to get that out because I'm feeling it strongly. I'm not sure how to navigate around this. Hours later, that baby did not survive. And that baby was murdered. And I felt like I watched this happen. I felt like, you know, so that being literally, that was one of the first births I attended within like 3 or 4 months of training as a doula. And so I learned then, you can do work to comfort moms, to support them, to advocate for them, or you can do work to save babies and mothers' lives. Now, of course, I felt very thankful that I have a lot of healers and elders who were able to support me through that time. Sophia Shaka is one of my great Jagnas, and she told me, you know, you may have saved that woman's life. Maybe you didn't save her baby's life, but maybe you being there was the reason that she still remained. And so I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of saving grace for me, because I definitely feel like I did absolutely nothing and I'm the reason that baby died, right? But when I look back at that, I look back to that experience regularly, and I think about how serious this work is and how swift the movements are. It was very swift movements that I could have taken to say, look at here, this is what's happening. This is what these providers are telling you. These are the steps you need to take. I believe that you and your baby are at risk. And if someone does not want to heed that, it is just and righteous for me to say, I wish you the best. I'm going to be going home now. And so I have learned how to like situate myself to protect myself, number one, because if you're going into enemy ground, you out your mind if you think I'm about to sacrifice myself. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to, I'll be having to tell people like, Araminta is guiding me all the time and knowing it ain't you. I done opened the door. I laid out the carpet and told you that you can walk through. I will no longer keep that door open and make for risk for all the other people who have come through. You understand? So
absolutely.
It's weird. It's weird being that like cutthroat doula, you know? That's really strange. But I have to do this because this is the work, you know? It's not like rubbing backs and burning oils. It's not that stuff. This is the work.
Man, I mean, that's, man, like, I mean, one, we talk about like this word essential employees is being used a lot.
Right.
That's essential work right there. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just so many things that you said that are just so deep. Like, so for me, just when my wife, had our son and just seeing that process, seeing everything that she went through, had we had this conversation maybe like 10 years ago or whatever, I wouldn't have had some context for it. But having witnessed that experience, it gives you a level of like reverence, for what it takes on both sides, for the woman, who is going through this to bring life into the world. And then also for the people who are helping her do that. And some of the things that you're talking about that you like have on your shoulders is heavy, and that's some intense work. And also when you mention like how we talk about birth just as like this like essential, like core foundational idea in life. I hadn't thought about it like that. Rebirth, all these things that we say, like this is the birth of I'm born again, all this stuff is like that symbolic thing of emerging from the womb is just like
it's almost like the first structure or system that you are relegated to. Like this is the first order that you will know. There are lots of other procedures and practices. Birth and the cycle of reproduction is the very first one that you are born into, and you will never get out of that cycle. Everything is always going to rotate this way. But I was just telling Jasmine that I remember when she was in labor and I was like waiting up for updates, like, and what happened next? Oh, she's still pregnant and it's the second day. I'm like, okay, well, are they moving around? So I had all of these thoughts, and I think what y'all did exceptionally well, and this is what people have to know, there are times that these tools will come in handy because we live in this space, we occupy this space in very similar ways to Europeans. We live in houses, we eat the same food very often, So, I mean, like we're going to see these same providers, we are walking just as much, we live very similar lifestyles. And so there may be moments where you're like, I got to go to this hospital, but you better go there very clear on what to expect and what is to be exchanged, what's to be provided. And I think that is the reason, and especially the amount of time that y'all spent at home, like y'all spent enough time that y'all didn't just stumble into the hospital. Y'all got there like, look, she done been in labor, okay? Yep. This whole time. This is what we need. The baby needs to come out, all right? And that's how people got to go into those spaces. And when you do that, like medical systems don't have a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
It's not much that they can do because I think she said that she was about 8 centimeters dilated when y'all left the house. I am so close to being fully dilated. You better not touch me, number one. And if my baby and myself, if we are presenting healthy, it's done. And y'all had a team of women,
Oh,
y'all had them.
One of the sisters, one of the mamas, Claudia, man, she passed away, but she was so dope, man. I'm telling you, we was in here, she was singing Odisha songs, she was bringing the spirit, she was bringing the energy, and that's just something I will never forget. So I just had to just kind of get out.
That's part of the work. Like people gotta realize how, and I think this is kind of one of the questions that you asked. I feel like I may have strayed away, but you have to realize how spiritual this work is, and that you must reverence these spirits that assist in this work in order to be protected. Do you know how many home births that transfer to hospitals end up in very horrible outcomes? A lot of them.
Man.
But y'all had done this work. So you have to understand, people can think and be mistaken to believe that we're like, never go to the hospital, never, never, never. No. You better use your wisdom to understand when you need to get extra help. But you also need to know there's work you need to do before you enter into that space. And because this is just my belief, I'm really just speculating. But because you guys did that work, y'all were protected in that space and got what you needed only and got out of there. But you can't believe that you're going to skip any part of that process.
Yeah.
Not honor the things, the people, and the spirits that need to be honored, and not bring them into this process, and that you're just going to be good. You flying on your own, and you really playing a game of chance. I have had some, when I was pregnant with, I almost said the second child, with our son.
Mm-hmm.
I was 29 weeks pregnant, and I believed that I was having some like very intense contractions. 29 weeks is very early to be having a baby.
Yeah.
I was like, this ain't good. My husband was on his way, he was a few days out from departing to Cuba. So I was like, well, if he's going to go, I need to go now to figure out what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I went, and all of the signs pointed to me having preterm labor, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that the baby was coming very, very, very early. This was not what we planned for.
Yeah.
Nobody usually plans to have a baby early.
Mm-hmm.
And so things were very scary. I was basically imprisoned in the hospital. It was horrible. Like, they're like, you're not leaving until you have this baby.
Yeah.
So we up in there, I think maybe by like the third day, when we had settled that I wasn't going anywhere. This was before I was a doula. My husband, who is just an excellent leader, he understands this man. So I joke about this every time I do an interview. I tell people that, like, I feel that my husband has inside of him an African woman inside of him. Because the way that he is able to attune to women and say, okay, this is what you need is impeccable. And then he also has this very unique ability to form like real intimate relationships with men. And I think it's because he just like gleans so much from Black women. Yeah. Anyway, so in the hospital, he's like, look, I know what you need. He set up, I mean, we were not supposed to have a room this large. We had a really big room. He set up an entire Yemoja shrine in the room, and all of the nurses would come in there like, we don't think this is allowed. He's like, no, it's fine. No, actually, it's fine. They're like, no, sir, you can't have candles in the hospital. He's like, no, but listen, it's okay. So he had people bringing all the melons, like everything, all the flowers, all the shells. And he brought pictures of only my maternal ancestors to place them on the shrine. And when I tell you that I was protected, I ended up having that baby, y'all. These people told me this baby was going to come out. Maybe I could keep him in there to 34 weeks, and that would be a miracle. I had that boy almost past my due date. So I look back at that experience, and I realized when you bring the appropriate people into this space, it don't matter how deep into some medical industrial complex you got, you better believe you're going to be protected. And if your child transitions, this is also another part of the work that people don't like to consider, but it's also related to their conception of the world. You know, we like to focus on life. The other side of that coin is death, always. And death is powerful. Death is good. Like, it's good. It leads to the next thing. So when you don't understand that these cycles are all about life and death, you can be very thrown off when death comes around for its turn. It always will come around. Man. So because we had that protection, I feel like I was able to release, if this baby is going to transition, ain't nothing I'm going to do to stop it. But in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that throughout this process, I am honoring the people and the spirits that needs to be honored so that I can get through with the rest of my work. So there's work that you do as a pregnant person, and then there's work that your baby is trying to come to do. And y'all got to really work together. But you got to understand it's not about just the work of giving birth to that baby. You better know as a pregnant person, there is emotional, spiritual, and physical work that you are doing. You better get yourself together. So in the modern realm, we tell moms, if you have any traumas or if you have any fears or if you have any anxieties, if you feel overly prepared for something, make sure you work through that because it will arise. Yeah. It will arise during your birth. All of those fears, all of those just emotional tangles, or if you had a little emotional scab that you've been picking at, that joint is going to bust wide open. Yeah. Because this is a life portal that's opened up and everything is coming out. It's a huge transition and you are becoming a new person. And so I like to see this process for women and for mothers as your opportunity to really be a new person. You are born again and you are transitioning to be a new person. So you better figure out everything that you need to do in this lifetime before you become the next person you're supposed to. If not, you're going to learn that lesson again. That's how all cycles work, right? These lessons come back to us. So don't allow for your pregnancy to go by and you didn't do all the things that you were supposed to do, because it will be a roadblock. So my father transitioned when I was 13 weeks pregnant in my last pregnancy. And I knew it. I was able to identify myself. Táyò, if you don't really like come to grips with this and start communing with your fathers and ancestors, I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even like put my father's photo onto our shrine. I was like, this will work. I just put his funeral program up there. I'm like, this will be enough.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready, you know? I don't know if you ever did that, but like, I just wasn't ready, right?
I get it, yeah.
And I knew that if I did not do this work, it was going to halt my birth. What do you think I did? I was lazy. I was like consumed with my grief. And during my birth, I prolonged my birth 3 hours because I just couldn't let go. I was like, no, I'm about to become someone that my father will never know. And I'm not ready. Yeah. And I was pregnant in the extra 3 hours because that baby would not come out.
Yeah. Man.
I was spewing a lot of things and going all over the place. But this is really like the work that I love. And I feel so blessed to be able to almost like skyrocket through life. I feel like I'm on fast forward because the wisdoms that I've been able to acquire around birth, they are supernatural for someone that's my age, you know? But it's a gift. We joke a lot as birth workers that every time, I don't know, how many times have you seen a baby come out of a vagina in your life?
Only once.
Right. I've seen it so many times. Like, what do you think my life is? Like, did it change your life?
It did.
It changed your life. Imagine seeing that like regularly.
All the time, yeah.
You are constantly just changed. So we joke that like anytime we get to see a baby be expelled from a body, we like, let me see, because it's like a life portal. And every time you look at that, like new information is downloaded to you. You are transformed, you're evolving, but quickly, like really like a portal. So I feel like I've been on fast forward so much in my life. So I have to kind of regulate that energy because I'm always like, don't you get it? You see it? The baby will, you know, it's a lot. I have like high energy, but I am always heightened by these things. People, this is such sacred work. Everybody don't get to do this, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone doesn't get to do this stuff. So I recognize how much of a burden it is, but it's an even greater gift.
I think you answered the question like times 10. I mean, and it's like, there's so many deep things that you're laying out. And like, I'm trying to keep track of them in my mind. I mean, one thing that you said, you talked about some babies who come and they transition, man, like in certain cultures, especially in Yoruba culture, there's distinct names given to babies based on the circumstances of their birth. Some babies are born to die. Some babies that they're born with the umbilical cord wrapped around them, they're given a name. And I myself don't understand the cultural significance of those names fully because it's a little bit different than the American cultural context, right? But there's some sort of deep significance based on the circumstances of how someone is born. And another thing that you said, I was waiting to drop this proverb. There's a proverb, I can't remember what ethnic group it comes from in Ethiopia, but it kind of says basically like that we're born out of the womb and then we return to the womb of the earth when we die. And so it just made me think about like something you had said like a little bit in the beginning of answering this question about kind of like the sacredness of the womb, and it's kind of something that we all come out of, man. So like I think you've laid out some really dope stuff. I mean, I think the work that you're doing is amazing. You know, your husband is amazing. He's a good dude. I mean, I remember I happened to, like, I think I really first started getting to know y'all. I think Alfred had invited me to drum, you know, at your
shower.
Yes. And so I came there and I was like, oh man, this couple is beautiful. And like I knew y'all just from like knowing of y'all around Howard's campus or whatever. But after that, you know, I think I would see y'all at the Billy Shaka's house and at different stuff like that. And then, since then, just being married people, being parents, y'all have just kind of been like, brother and sister to me. So I appreciate you immensely. I appreciate
I
you.
thank you. I'm very thankful. Like, I tell you, I could talk about this stuff for forever, but being able to talk to someone in a space that is like, you've already set all of these things up. These are already basic understandings, and there's only more information to build. Usually I gotta build from the bottom. Like, well, let me talk to you about the history of obstetrics in this country, okay?
Yeah.
So not having to do that is it's a blessing to me, because much of the conversations that I have are very laborious, you know? They're very repetitive, and I appreciate that you have given me you have enough, you've come into this conversation with enough context where we can actually, like dialogue. So
I mean, I feel like, this is, at face value, people would think this is something that only pertains to women. But like, if you are a husband or father, like, you have to know about this stuff. You have to care about it. You have to care about just women's health, women's reproductive health. Because you gotta be a rock. You gotta be a support system. While
my husband
y'all
said to me a lot. We have these conversations. This is probably worth y'all talking about, but he will ask, regularly, and how do men fit into this space? Like, what is the role that we should be playing in birth? And I, of course, want to think, okay, traditionally, like, what were African men doing, right? I wasn't there. Y'all was like, people said, go get some water, and y'all would go. Maybe it was you, but maybe there was also a woman who could get the water. You were not around, like, you think about the postpartum rituals of lots of ethnic groups. You don't meet your baby until after they've come out of this house, You are gonna meet them some days later. So that is kind of difficult, because we're not in that place, we're not in that space. You better be there. You better be there, and you better know. I've been telling people now during this crisis, if your man is like, yo, I'm gonna be there, you can only have one person in the hospital, they say. If it's gonna be your man, he better know how to save your life, or he gotta stay at home.
Yeah. Because
he doesn't have these rights. And this is exactly what we have been doing. Like, the healers and the midwives in the community, they know if you up in here, it's because you're gonna help save this life or this baby's life.
Yeah.
And Ben was like, you stay on that side. We'll call you when we need you. But we're not doing that now. So I think if we can learn anything about the way that we've been doing this for all of time, is that if you are in this space, you have to be essential. You have to make yourself essential and make yourself valuable enough that you could be the person that saves their lives.
Yeah.
So like, in a modern context, we are seeing Black women pass away, and their partners are like just overcome by grief, but also like, man, I wish I would have said something.
Yeah.
Do you know enough to avoid being that man? Yeah. If not, call somebody up and say, hey, I need you to take my wife to the hospital when she has her baby, because you know more than me. If you are going to play that risky game in birthing your low-risk baby at the hospital, you better make sure that the people who are there can make sure that they come back home if it's not you. So it's really everybody's responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good note. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think that's a really good conclusion, because it's something for people who are listening. This is not just a woman's topic. This is something that, Black men need to listen to, men in general. So I appreciate you immensely, and greet the family for me.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to show this to my kids. They've been watching all the interviews, yo. All of them. I turned in the car and I'm like, what you watching? And she was so confused that it was your face on both screens. I'm like, look, this is the same person. She's like, what? So we love it. I appreciate you for doing this work too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Of course.